In one of the shortest airports to ever exist in commercial service, Sheffield City Airport was developed to provide widespread connections to a largely underserved part of northern England, though due to changing market dynamics and a reluctancy by the site's owners to expand the facility further so as to incorporate a wider range of aircraft, this field would only see passenger operations last for 4 years. The notion of constructing an airport to serve Sheffield can be traced back to 1968, when preliminary plans were proposed for a regional air facility somewhere in South Yorkshire, though these early efforts failed to progress beyond the conceptual stage, primarily due to the region's complex geography, with Sheffield often described as a city built on 7 hills, lacking large expanses of flat terrain suitable for a standard airport layout. Therefore, in the face of engineering such a facility within the existing topographical constraints being prohibitively expensive and technically difficult for the time, the idea was shelved, though never entirely discarded, and would remain dormant throughout the 1970s and into the 1980s. By the middle of that decade, the economic landscape of South Yorkshire had changed dramatically, with the region, once an industrial powerhouse centred on coal, steel and manufacturing, experiencing a sharp decline as traditional industries collapsed, while against this backdrop, urban planners and policymakers began to revisit long-abandoned ideas, including the establishment of an airport as part of broader regeneration strategies. There was growing recognition that Sheffield's lack of its own airport put it at a disadvantage compared to similarly sized cities across Europe, and that without direct air links, the ability for the area to attract inward investment, host international business, or retain corporate headquarters became increasingly difficult. By the early 1990s, momentum behind the proposal to build an airport returned with renewed urgency, with inspiration being drawn from London City Airport, a compact facility built in East London during the 1980s and tailored to serve short-haul business travellers, with a new vision rapidly taking shape, and consultants concluded that a similar model, known as a stall port or short takeoff and landing airport, could work for Sheffield. Such a facility would not require the long runways and extensive flatland associated with conventional airports, but could instead operate with smaller aircraft designed for steeper approaches and shorter runways, with the idea being both practical and aspirational, as it offered a realistic engineering solution while also symbolizing economic revival. Attention soon focused on Tinsley Park, an area located in the east of Sheffield near the M1 motorway and Sheffield Parkway, offering excellent road connectivity, with this site having previously been associated with industrial activity and open-cast coal extraction, together with it bounding the former site of the Tinsley Railway marshalling yard, all of which added a layer of complexity but also meant redevelopment was feasible. It was here that the groundwork began in the early 1990s for what would become Sheffield City Airport, with the design centred on the single 3,973-foot runway 1028 that would be sufficient to handle small turboprops and regional jets, in combination with a modest terminal tailored to serve business passengers, while its location just 7 miles from the city centre was a major advantage, positioning it as a convenient alternative to the region's more distant airports. Despite these favourable aspects, the project was hampered by inherent limitations from the start, with the runway, as hemmed in by both terrain and surrounding development, lacking any ability for easy lengthening in the future, thus meaning the airport would never be able to accommodate larger commercial jets used by low-cost airlines or long-haul carriers. Furthermore, airspace access was limited, with the airport lacking controlled airspace and radar coverage, meaning all arriving and departing flights operated under visual flight rules in Class G airspace, an arrangement that many commercial airlines deemed too risky, with this regulatory and infrastructural shortfall later proving to be significant in discouraging carriers from investing long-term. Nevertheless, optimism prevailed during the planning and construction phases, with city leaders, regional authorities and private stakeholders seeing Sheffield City Airport as a flagship project and a symbol of the city's ambition to reinvent itself after years of economic decline, with the airport not only expected to connect Sheffield directly with key UK and European business hubs, but also to act as a magnet for development. There were forecasts of 300,000 annual passengers, the creation of thousands of jobs, and the eventual emergence of a business park and conference centre around the site, with the hope being that, once operational, the airport would firmly establish Sheffield as a globally connected city, no longer reliant on airports in Manchester, Leeds or the East Midlands. Planning and delivery of the airport were coordinated by the Sheffield Development Corporation, or SDC, a body created to oversee regeneration in the city's eastern corridor, with the development agreement being tied to a complex arrangement with AF Budge, a company that would first undertake open-cast coal mining on the site, then restore the land and construct the airport once the extraction phase had been completed. Construction was completed in 1997, and although the airport was officially opened in that year, the first scheduled commercial services commenced on February 16, 1998, with the airport infrastructure consisting of a modest terminal building with 2 passenger gates and basic amenities aimed at business and short-haul travelers, while the airport's ICAO code was Echo Golf Sierra Yankee. During its inaugural year, Sheffield City Airport recorded 46,000 passengers, with this number growing rapidly to a peak of 75,000 passengers in 1999, which represented the airport's commercial zenith, offering scheduled domestic services to Belfast, London City and Jersey, as well as international connections to Amsterdam Schiphol, Brussels Zaventem and Dublin. Airlines operating from Sheffield included KLM UK, British Airways via its regional partner British Regional Airlines, Irish carrier Air Aran, and Belgian flag carrier Sabena, with the airport primarily hosting regional turboprops such as the Shorts 360, ATR 42, BAE Jetstream 41, and the Fokker 50, which typically seated between 30 and 50 passengers, though BAE 146 jets were also known to have visited the airport on occasion. In its short existence, the airport also witnessed an accident, when on February 4, 2001, Short 360-100, Echo India Bravo Papa Delta of Air Aran, en route from Dublin, suffered a hard landing while touching down on runway 28, whereupon it bounced, slewed to the left, and ran onto the grass with its left wing tip touching the ground, with the possible cause being identified as the handling pilot unintentionally selecting the propellers into the ground fine position while still in the air, though the result was no injuries reported among the 25 passengers and 3 crew, but the aircraft itself was written off. Of all the routes, the Amsterdam service operated by KLM UK stood out as the airport's most successful, which, at its height, operated up to 3 times daily and was regarded by KLM UK as their best ever startup route in terms of initial performance, while British Airways also maintained twice daily services to both London City and Belfast, and Air Aran provided vital links to Dublin. However, this momentum proved short-lived, as by 2000, annual passenger figures had dropped to 60,000, and by 2001 they had plummeted further to 33,000, while in the final year of Sheffield's commercial operation in 2002, this number had collapsed to a mere 13,000. The cause of this rapid downturn were multifaceted, with one of the more critical issues being the airport's short runway, which excluded the use of larger, more fuel-efficient aircraft that were becoming standard for low-cost carriers, with budget airlines like Ryanair and EasyJet beginning to transform European air travel, which meant Sheffield found itself unable to adapt to the shifting market. Meanwhile, competition from nearby airports intensified, with Manchester, Leeds Bradford and East Midlands all offering longer runways, better infrastructure and increasing route options, thus meaning passengers naturally drifted towards these alternatives, especially as Sheffield City's flight offerings dwindled. The timing of the airport's launch, just before the budget airline boom, proved to be a further misfortune, as while Sheffield had intended to cater to a premium business travel market, the economics of air travel were moving in the opposite direction. By August 2002, British Airways ended its last remaining service from Sheffield, and from then on, only ad hoc chartered flights and private aviation operated from the site, while during that same year, the Peel Group acquired the airport from Sheffield City Council for just £1, with the terms of the sale granting Peel the right to redevelop the site after 10 years if the airport was deemed commercially unviable. This clause would later become the centre of significant public controversy, with critics questioning whether Peel had any real interest in reviving the airport, particularly given their ownership and development plans for Doncaster Sheffield Airport, which opened in 2005 at the site of the former RAF Finningley, with detractors alleging that essential infrastructure at Sheffield was quietly dismantled, ensuring it could not viably return to commercial service. In 2004, an independent assessment by York Aviation concluded that Sheffield City Airport was unlikely to be commercially viable by the 2007 deadline, and thus the airport's Civil Aviation Authority licence was withdrawn in April 2008, and full closure followed soon after, with the last fixed-wing departures from the field being positioning flights for the small array of Cessnas and Pipers based at the airport on September 1st of that year. This wasn't entirely the end of aviation activity at Sheffield City Airport, though, as a base for the Yorkshire Air Ambulance had been opened at the site on October 25, 2007, though the Air Ambulance base was closed in 2010 and moved to Bagby Airfield near Thirsk, while the National Police Air Service closed their own base at Sheffield City on February 1, 2016, bringing an end to aviation activity at the site. Despite a public campaign in 2012 that included over 5,500 petition signatures and even a last-minute bid from an unnamed investor, efforts to restore the airport failed, and by 2014, construction had begun to transform the site into a new commercial hub, with the area now forming part of the Sheffield Business Park, home to key organisations such as Boeing and the University of Sheffield's Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre. The former terminal and control tower have been repurposed into offices, the helipads are now part of a car park, and the old runway, though no longer operational, is still largely visible beneath the overgrown grass, with proposals as to its redevelopment still remaining unclear. To summarise, Sheffield City Airport was conceived with ambition and opened with high hopes, but a mix of geographic constraints, shifting market dynamics, technical limitations, and questionable strategic decisions sealed its fate, with the last traces of the field now standing as a stark reminder of how infrastructure projects, no matter how well-intentioned, can unravel when critical assumptions fail to hold.